Welcome back to Tools and Track. In this episode, we're all going to admire Mechanical Hodor's rack.
Welcome to Two Big Sacks.
As we've discussed, we are going to look at steering racks today. Excitement. This thing will now gradually look more and more like a car. So, this is what we removed from the Mazda. This is the standard power steering rack.
It's the wrong way around.
It's the wrong way around, I'll grant you, because, spoiler alert, I'm really not going to go much further than this when it comes to this rack. But aside from it being power steering, which is going to be nigh on useless for a car that weighs 750 kilo, there's other issues with this rack that I think means we're not going to go much further with it. Namely, I have set up the bend angle for where this inner tie rod starts to sort of bend. That matches the line with where the suspension will go up and down. So if you imagine the top and the bottom wishbones have a centre that they will rotate on. On that line, the steering rack's inner tie rod also has to match that. If it's out with this on each side, it's going to have some rather unpleasant characteristics when it comes to your steering, particularly during cornering when all of these joints start to move. So if I've lined that up there, you'll see on this side, we're miles out. This is a common problem in the low-cost community. You can shorten these. It's pretty minge bag and I just don't fancy my chances with it. So I think the simple solution here is to look to another option. Now, we could go back to the original Ford design and look for an escort rack, but remember my comments about finding cheap Ford parts in this day and age? I've made an executive decision regarding where we're going with this engine.
Okay, and the car? And the car?
Aye, I mean, probably.
Right.
However, there's something that I feel we will no longer be requiring.
Power steering?
Yes! Good man. The car will never be heavy enough to warrant it. It's going to ruin the feel of it. It's going to be complexity we don't need to deal with.
And you know what's fantastic? It has its own belt.
Exactly.
That is absolutely superb. It's completely separate to the alternator belt.
Therefore,
just take it off and leave the
main pulley, yeah. Just
pulley,
delete all of everything that's power steering, mate.
Cool, I am on it. Welcome to Tools and Track Hockey Edition, where we try to do things, fail miserably, and ask Tommy for help. First thing we're going to do is get rid of this belt. Now, generally speaking, I have worked on MX-5 engines before with an MX-5. For the alternator, there's a little lever that adds tension, so we're going to do the same thing. It's probably going to be this. So first thing we're going to do is loosen off the tension, get the belt out of the way. And then it's a matter of what holds it to the block, what can go. It's all about saving weight. We don't need any of this gubbins, as Tommy said, so let's get cracking. Great success, one power steering pump removed.
If you require an NB MX-5 power steering pump, hit me up in the comments below and make me an offer. Conversely, if you're a Patreon, hit me up in the Patreon site. You can come and collect this for free.
So what is this?
This is my solution, removed from the dinkiest car known to man.
It's smart.
It is. It's smart in the fact that it's pretty bloody compact. However, it's going to present us with their own issues. Now, the first thing, I have no idea what these are like when I order them, but if you're ever looking to spec a rack for your car, you need to remember that if that doesn't match the turn that you're looking for, so the hubs are going to be front facing on this, right? So if I was to turn that, and for some reason that rack and pinion was up the other way round, you can cause yourself some problems. So, worth looking for this if you're going to start.
Oh, of course, because if it's the front of the hub assembly, it needs to move outwards.
Correct. So, I have totally rolled the dice on this. I had no idea if that was going to work or not. But it does, so that's good. That's kind of in the middle.
Which is where the engine...
That is pointing straight into the engine, yes. Yeah. So, we might have to deal with that as well. Also, this, you'll probably note, is completely different from that. So I'm going to have to rip this apart and see where the difference lies. You never know, I mean that's the output UJ. The input in that might be some pure stroke of luck be a square flange type, but I fucking doubt it. That's Deutsches versus das Japanese.
That's
wait a minute, was there history in the past with Germany versus Japan? They usually got along.
How do things go?
I mean, to be fair, they've been known to get along in the past, just not to everyone else's benefit.
Actually, there was a recent German collaboration which worked really, really well.
Oh yeah, aye, as long as you don't, like, get hung up in it.
Are you going to try and do something minge baggery?
Always. Always. If there's no minge baggery involved, then where's the fun? So, if these output flanges don't match, what we're going to do is bastardise this, cut this output flange off, chop that one down, and we're going to adapt this to look like an MX5 on the output flange. So it takes, and we'll do it right.
Yeah, I've no doubt about it.
Well, no, we will absolutely have to do it right, because I've got to be honest, I like being able to steer cars. So that's the UJ off the MX5 rack. Spline. And spline.
Just cut splines under a grinder.
Doesn't it fit?
Grinder.
So, aye, we'll just
cut on splines. How hard can it be?
How bad can that possibly turn out? Option number one, this, I'm going to buy an RS3. Option number two.
Do you sell coke?
I'll need you if I'm going to buy an RS3. I chop this down, we graft on the MX5's output shaft onto this so that this will work again. Option three, we go to smart and we just buy the UG that fits that. But on the plus side, if anyone would like to buy one of these steering racks, this is available on the Tools and Track store that doesn't exist for £100 British. I thought, will we go with 100?
Ah, sure, why not?
100 British pounds. Or if you're a Patreon, you can come and pick it up for free.
But there will be no output shaft.
No, there probably will be. Mate, there's not enough meat in this. Look,
That's
there's
tiny.
zero. There's no nub. That will knob graft on. I think there might be more nub if there wasn't power steering gubbins on it. Like maybe the non-power steering one, but it's spline in that one, it isn't. So we're just.
So let's put class in session for a minute. What exactly happens with the power steering fluid?
It'll go into here. So this is like
So how does it turn?
Well, it's under constant pressure. So basically what happens is, with power steering, if you can imagine, you've got a dam, right? And there's pressure going in each way. So if you just put enough pressure onto one, that'll start moving the fan and makes it easier for you to turn it. So the pressure's always acting in both directions, but all the pressure's doing is taking the load off of the wheels.
So it basically neutralises the load, right? That's very clever. That's extremely clever.
And you'd be amazed how little of that you need for that to actually happen.
That's amazing.
It's that tiny wee thing can like finger turn your entire steering rack with the weight of the car on it. I love power steering, man, it's great. However, in this application, it's useless. Square shaft into spline joint. I've got to be honest, guys, I don't know how I'm going to solve this one. I know it's not going to be through staring at it. However, I do know it's probably going to involve eBay and more money. Back in a moment. Hello, right, I'm back. So, I've went on eBay and I've done the money thing. Sometimes to solve a problem, you need to go all out. There's our joint, so that's a start. And handy enough, it comes fully equipped with an entire steering rack. Now this gives us another conundrum. Do we even persevere with the Mazda rack? Now that we have a full smart car one. Let's put some thought into this. So we have two steering racks and each come with their pros and cons. Obviously, cons for the Mazda include it doesn't mate to the rack that we've got from the smart car. That would require some significant amount of fabrication to make it adapt. Pros, it does have all the stocks though, and they're going to be quite useful when it comes down to wiring things. Unfortunately, the smart car comes with the square root of f*** all. Similarly, some pros for the Mazda include that it's sturdier, and more importantly than anything else, it's not f***ed. Because sadly, the smart car one kind of is. Thanks eBay, come up trumps once again. And the reason I had to buy this whole rack off of eBay, by the way, is as you can see, this is an integral part of the entire shaft. You cannot go to Smart and buy that off the shelf. It is the full shaft. This idea is starting to look less and less bright by the minute. However, I will not be beaten. I have a total conundrum facing me with this steering shaft, and to be honest, I need to sit and stew on it. And there's a pretty good chance that if you were sitting in the same position, you might go away for weeks on end, stew on it, and then lose heart, and then just completely abandon the project altogether. I speak from experience, I've done it before. Not today. Let's move on to another problem and see if we can find a solution to that instead. And that is mounting this guy to the chassis. we need to deviate from the book quite a bit with this. As you can imagine, the original book was for an Escort or maybe a Sierra rack. The adaptation for the book was then for a Mazda MX-5 rack. This little guy, well, it doesn't match anything like it. And similarly, it's not going to mount anything like they did before either. So we're going to have to go off piste. But I hear you say, won't that causes problems? Well, yes and no. So, on the Haynes manual, it does give you the steering angles that these need to sit at to work out the geometry to work with the hubs for an MX-5. So I know my X and my Y for where this guy needs to sit. All I need to do is make sure when it's hung there, the clamps hold it in place. And one last thing I will need to consider, the output for that pinion angle. And you'll notice the engine isn't in place. That is going to be irrelevant. This pinion angle I am not going to sacrifice for the location of an engine. It's just too much of a critical component. This has to fit right. If things in the engine don't work with it, well, that's a problem for the engine. Old Mazda power steering, very heavy, very convoluted and very not suitable for the application. It, much like all of the old traditional racks, has two clamps with 4 bolts that hold it in place. That geometry would more or less match what a Sierra one would be. This guy, however, well, it's completely different. It has only 2 bolt holes and they're at 90 degrees from the angle you would normally find on the MX-5. Pay note to the output of the pinion. That is going to be a completely different method for mounting it to what you'd normally find in the manual. Right, okay, well don't worry about that too much. That'll just involve a bit of fabrication and daydreaming, and I do that really well. At this point, I should point out some of these differences in the adaptations we're going to have to do and why we're actually picking this rack. So that bend angle there would need to come in, let's say hypothetically 6 inches. I have got more than that with the little smart one. Now, that will present me issues as well. I will probably have to extend this out just to get that bend angle perfect. Now that's not going to be a problem. These inner tie rods thread into the rack. So all I need to do is thread in a couple of adapters just to get that spacing right. It's easier to add an adapter in than it is to take metal out. With these threaded adapters, and this is where I get pretty cunning in my old age, I'll make the inside thread match this and the outside thread match that. And that will keep my MX-5 compatibility with the tie rods. Not bad, eh? If you haven't already worked out by now, I've added in the nose cone, for my reference really more than yours, so you'll know that this is the front of the car elevated from the side. So, you'll have all of your suspension geometry pickups around about here. What we need to do is work out where in amongst all of this steering rack will need to fit. What we need to look for is a centre line that is 93mm back from the absolute front of the car and 95mm up from the absolute bottom. Everything I do from there on in simply has to meet that marker. What you would normally find in the book is a bracket, something that would come up from the base of the car a bit like that and go on here, standing off, and then onto it would go the rack with the normal 2 bolts. The problem I've got here is I don't have this at all. What I have instead is a rack that's got a big bracket that comes at the bottom like that. Simple science would tell me if I just put in a crossbar here that will go between each side of the chassis and then project up a couple of plates. So let's do that. And yes, obviously I've extrapolated all of the sizes off of the steering rack as well. So now that I know all of these standoffs, that'll tell me that the steering rack needs to go there minus there. Right, aye, we'll just try that and see what happens. Ooh, that's tight, isn't it? Not gonna lie, even as I was mounting this, my bum was puckering a wee bit as to whether or not I'd have the clearance. But I'm happy to say 2mm clearance is still clearance, so I think we should be okay with that. Also, that's got the added benefit of more than likely clearing that alternator in the engine, so I'm not too disheartened with the fact that this points down and gets quite close to the chassis because it gives me room for a lot more of other things. Unfortunately, at this point, I'm still waiting for steel from our favourite auction site so that I can extend the shaft and get the steering wheel mounted in, so that's going to be in the next episode. Besides which, I think I've waffled quite long enough on measurements, sums and welding. Oh, by the way, see how we busted out these guys and I can't stop banging on about them? And everyone in the comments keeps asking where do I get them from, and all I can say is it's the middle aisle of Aldi. Well, I've been in the middle aisle of Aldi once again, and they're back! And because they're back, I bought another set. So, if you are a Patreon and you'd like to win this, after this episode on the Patreon site, there's a thing where you can log in and say you want to enter the competition. At the next episode, I'm going to pull a winner out, and one of you guys is going to win this amazing box of amazing clamps. Get yourself one of these, get on Patreon, get logged on and get entered in. So, all that remains is to say, to everyone that has been a patron up to now, appreciate the support. Make sure you do the like, subscribe thing, obviously, and we will be back, probably next week, with more welding, chopping, grinding fun. Cheers again, thanks for watching guys, see you later.
Have you not got to rename it for Locost to something else?
Aye.
Because Simon says.
Simon, I can't believe you called it low cost. You might as well called it or fucking hobo. Thanks, Simon. I love the sheer fucking feral. Barry, what we need to look for is I forgot it already.